We'll be looking at expectations from the new EDO ESCO as Obaseki has assigned portfolio to commissioner and he has tasked them to be results-oriented. The Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki, sworn in commissioners and 2 special advisors as members of the State Executive Council with a charge to serve the citizens with their respective portfolios and deliver on the expectations of the people. And to join us discuss that this morning, I have from my immediate left, Reverend Olu Martins. He's a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for coming.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And from my extreme left is Comrade Freeborn. He's the PA to the immediate past Edo State House of Assembly Speaker. Thank you so much for coming, Comrade Freeborn. Okay, let's start with Reverend Olu Martins. The governor is in his last lap, and with the shake-up in his administration, with the new executive coming on board, do you think they can help him to achieve the final phase of his administration?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Indeed, it's not just the commissioners that should help the governor in their own language now finish strong. The Edo people have a responsibility to engage government. Okay. Because there's nobody who runs government with his personal funds. Well, that's why it's called common patrimony, if you like, common wealth, and it belongs to everybody. And I must especially thank the media, because without the collaborative effort of the media, Patrick Henry said, our collective freedoms, the gains of democracy, cannot be duly delivered except with collaboration with media. We constantly engage government. It's called agenda setting. So the people have a responsibility. The government must do a needs assessment. So the government doesn't throw things at people that they don't need. Okay. They must have an opportunity to interface with the people. And that's primarily why you have the 24 members of the House of Assembly. Fortunately, we also have 18 commissioners alongside special advisors who are constantly engaging with the populace and doing a needs assessment. This is what the people need. This is what their priorities are. I know government has its priorities, but there must be a nexus, a concatenation, a meeting point between what government wants to do and between what the people need. So that you don't go to a place where they need water and don't give them transformer, and then you don't even energize the transformer. You'll be there as government project, but you'll be there as government project that does not meet the yearnings and the aspirations of the Edo people. So we're excited that government has done a shake-up. Because what the governor in his wisdom has done is to look at commissioners who have not served the interest of not just the vision or aspirations of his administration, but the Edo people. Now, we had commissioners who were, catanqueros before now. We had commissioners where they moved to ministry. We had an issue with the commissioner for youth, elsewhere commissioner for youth, and what's the other ministry that it is tied to now? And there was an issue there. And that same commissioner was moved from Ministry of Information. So I think the governor has looked at such characters and said, look, you do not fit our visions as a people, and so we must pick people who are hands-on. I do expect that in the last lap, I'm not much of a sportsman, but usually if you see whether it's a 4x4 or a 4x100 relay race, usually put the best man at the last so that he covers up. All right? You know that once you give that, so if you watch Jamaica, for instance, or America, they put Gavin, the last man. They put Usain Bolt, the last man. Because if, for instance, the first 3 people have not been able to meet up, you put your best leg. So that as soon as you hand that last guy the baton, you're sure that the lapses of the other people will cover up. So we hope that these guys are the Usain Bolts of Godwin Obaseki. So that once you give them the baton, because this is the last lap, once you give them the baton, they're able to cover up for the nuances of what some other commissioners couldn't do, or perhaps double up in their effort to ensure that in the final analysis, Governor Godwin Obaseki indeed finishes strong.
Okay, now, Comrade Freeborn Ahono, looking at the change of guard and the new ESCOs, what are your expectations as an individual from them?
Yeah, my expectations are quite high. Going about the previous commissioners and what they were able to do. I think the opportunity given to this present set of commissioners is for them to prove themselves. Because governance is not just about the executive, like the governor himself alone. It's all about the people, the team. It's a teamwork, and the commissioners have a whole lot of roles to play. For instance, you have a commissioner in charge of the environment. It's not the governor that will go about the environment, looking at the environment if it's clean or not. The commissioners and the ministry are in charge of those things. And if those things are not done, the people tend to complain about the government. But there are people who those responsibilities have been assigned to. That's where the commissioners come in. So having assigned portfolio to them is their duty to now go about, look at what the people actually need that their ministry can tackle. So if the commissioners perform their role, you see the people will not paint the government in good light. That's what I think. I think the expectations are quite high, and they have a role to play.
Okay, let's quickly come to you now. The governor promised to finish strong. And of course, he also said he was going to make Edo great again. 8 years almost down the line. Are we getting close to some of his campaign promises?
Well, I can tell you for free that things are, being done, differently, as far as Edo State is concerned. And I say so very modestly, because I come from the critical sector.
Okay.
And one of the things that we do is to constantly look at what the governor is doing well and the areas he needs to improve on. They are called KPI, key performance indices. Okay. For instance, it's novel to know, it's exciting to know that for the first time we have hotspot areas in Edo State where people can go and browse for free. I have some of my youth members of my church that they go Ring Road. What's happening in Ring Road? Everybody's going to Ring Road until I realized there was free Wi-Fi there. And it's not just in Ring Road, it's in a couple of places. Now look at what is happening. I like what JUPSA is doing, the John Odigwe Public Service Agency, in terms of onboarding for commissioners. Usually it doesn't happen. What you have usually that people are appointed commissioners and they become political commissioners. There's no like a welcome on board package. You're not able to say, this is what, you're not able to run them through what the vision of the organization, in this case the Edo State government, is doing. So there's a lot that is going on in terms of trying to give an orientation to say, look, this is public service. And with public service, you must meet up with what the vision of this organization is trying to do. There's a lot going on at the civil service. I mean, for a long time, many of those buildings around the Palm House were left, fallow. If you go to, people now go to those areas to take pictures, and it look like you're outside, the shores of this country. And it's not just a container thing, it's also a content thing. Because you can actually have a beautiful grave, but it contains rotten bones. But in this particular case now, there is constant training, retraining going on for civil service people. It's called learning, unlearning, and relearning. Because, civil service is the backbone. And most time when you get into government as a government appointee, you don't know what happens. It's the civil servants that tell you where the lapses are. If there's money to be stolen, it's the civil service that tell you how to steal it and how to retire it. So there's no difference between how a governor can deliver and how active and well-trained the civil service is. There's a lot of training that is going on. A couple of people have been employed into the health sector. Yeah. There's a lot going on there. So in terms of training, and retraining, if you go to Government House, for instance, and we used to be very frequent in Government House was the jamboree in years back, all right? I remember at one point in time, we heard that there was an exchange of gunfire between XYZ group and XYZ group.
In the Government House.
That's right, in the Government House. What if you go to Government House? Now, if you have no business in Government House, many of the offices have been redecorated to look like real, government, circles. You don't get to any commissioner's office or any, let's say for instance, for the chief of staff office, and then you see one brand of wine and another brand of wine there. The best you see is tea because the place is cold. So when you see that, it's already clear that you're here for business. You enter
okay.
into the governor's office, you know you're here for business. So I think that, and I think that the government is not just affecting physical infrastructure. It's also affecting our perception to governance. Look at when roads are done. Somebody does a road for instance, 250 million. Then he gathers Ashwebi women, gathers the NEG in that area, gathers a whole lot, and spends another 100 million to what you call commissioning. What is commissioning in Edo State? Commissioning is that the barriers that were put there before the roads were fixed are removed. And then you just drive through. And that's what the commissioning
the regular ceremony that comes with...
because that in itself is in its leakages. Because sometimes we look at inflow when you're talking about cash flow quadrants, but you're not also looking at outflow. A lot of times you're looking at money that is coming in, but you're not looking at how much you are expending. And by the time you're able to block those loopholes, you find out that you are able to save a lot. To do, for instance, what is happening, I don't know about other people's area, but my area, we're doing like 20 hours of electricity. And you wonder why. That's because the Osisiamo power plant, 90 megawatts, has been taken off the traditional, what you call the BEDC or the national grid.
Okay.
And what Edo State needs, for instance, is 400. Okay. But what we get is about 100. And that's what is shared across the 18 local governments. So if government now has electricity, 90 megawatts, added to that, you can pull some people out of it, and then the 100 can be, some people can have more constant electricity, while some other people stay on what government has done with the 90.
Okay, Reverend, I'll come back to you. Let's quickly come to you. He talked about revenue and managing revenue, cash inflow. Part of the assignment the governor gave the people that were brought on board, he said they should ensure that they revive the revenue of the state. There was a time we had backlash, the deputy governor addressing some set of persons and telling them how we had shortfall in our revenue generation. Do you think with the current people we have on ground now, we are going to have a revived and well-structured inflow of revenue of the state?
Yeah, I'm very confident in the ability to generate revenue for the state. In the transport sector, for instance, that's where most of our revenue as a state comes from. And if the commissioners actually know their earnings, I think they will be able to derive more.
We're not going to have people putting money in their Ghana must go and arranging for themselves. Since it's the final lap.
Yes.
It's the final lap,
Yeah, the state government mode of revenue collection is actually different from how it used to be, where you now have some kind of set of persons just collect revenue for their own personal use. But it's been modelized that once every revenue you are collecting is digitalized, so it goes straight to the government's coffers. So it's easy for them to monitor what is coming in and what is being spent. So I think with the set of commissioners, the government should be able to get more revenue.
Now, Reverend, I personally have experience. I've gone to do 1 or 2 transactions with the state government that have to pay for, and it was processed. With the tight digital system and mechanism on ground, we still had shortfall the other time, and the deputy governor wasn't happy with that turnout. Are we not going to have a kind of final giveaway and takeaway as we are winding up in this government with our revenue generation?
Well, like you said, when you automate revenue, there are universities you go to, nobody collects cash from you.
We still have shortfall.
Oh, no, because it's money. I mean, you can't have 80%. If you have, you can't have 100% if you have 80%. Do not forget that no matter how fantastic a system is, it's a system organized by man. Okay. And man is not machine. Man must have its shortfalls. But I think that an area that government must also look at, in regards to what you have said, is that there must be government engagement. So if I were to advise government, I'm not too sure that the relationship, the romance between government and the media is robust enough. I think that in this final lap, because I remember years ago, there was this girl I wanted to marry years ago, and I was winking at her, and she wasn't responding, only for me to realize that there was no light. So it was only me that knew that I was winking. She didn't see me winking.
You were dating yourself or
Sometimes
winking at yourself?
I was trying to cut her eye, but light. I didn't know there was no light. And I just wondered why she wasn't responding, only for me to realize that I'm the only one that knew that I was winking.
Okay.
Government is doing a whole lot. And government is also engaging people in terms of what it is doing, how they can do it better. But a whole lot of people do not know what government is doing. There was a youth outing the other time, and I was surprised to hear some of these things coming straight from the mouth, of the governor. We have a special advisor on media and project. There is a commissioner for, information. But I think that what government needs to do is to recruit, media-friendly people who have a media face, so that in this last lap, people can know what the government is doing. I'm concerned about succession, because there is no success without a succession. With all of the reforms that the government, has in place, with regards to, a lot of times I go to, Mission Road, because my wife's got a store, and then I have to take her there, especially when she's buying in bulk. And then as soon as I want to go into their parking space, somebody is looking at my plate number and is entering me into some tab on his hand. He's timing me. If I do over an hour, I come to him, he calculates when I came in and when I'm want to leave, and then he gives me a ticket. I go to pay. That information goes straight to the government coffers. To government coffers. The governor has said by September of this month, there will be full e-government. What it means is that memos, files, you don't have to carry paper. So somebody cannot now keep your memo here and say, or your file here and say, no. As soon as the file is entered into the system, it follows through the system by itself. The governor, as we speak to you, doesn't sign any paper in terms of approving, memos or money. So when you have, a system like that, and then with the laying of fiber optics all over the place, you'll find out that you would initiate e-governance. We will reduce waste of time, and then we will reduce time on bureaucracy, and more especially the time that you spend on paper. People say, just like you're saying, so that you can block the loophole. Somebody says he wants to buy a ream of paper. He ends up not buying a ream of paper. Somebody wants to buy 40 pencils. He ends up not buying. When you have e-governance, you find out that some of these things are in place. But more especially, sir, is that I should encourage using this platform, because it's a media platform. And there needs to be more media engagement, not just reading. Not everybody can read. All the women many women in the market cannot read. But you see, when you have audio visual or visual, whilst you're driving, you're hearing what government is doing. I appreciate what these media guys are doing, but the bulk of the work they're doing is on reportage and is on writing. We need editorials. We need faces that can come on air to engage the people, and then they say feedback. This is what the government is doing. This is what they want to do, and this is how they can do it.
Okay, I would like you to hold this on one hand, Reverend. I'll come back to you, but I just want you to hold this. Talking about someone who succeeds the governor. Sustainability is one thing we are lacking in governance. By the time a government goes, the next one comes in and starts up his own project and all that, taking the people backward. I would like to ask if you think we have anyone that can succeed or fit into what the governor is doing currently. Just kindly hold this on one hand while I come to Freeborn. To an extent, some constituency are yet to enjoy the dividends of this delivery the government is doing currently. Some persons are complaining roads are not fixed. I would want to mention some areas, but there are places where we have bad roads. And I've been in Benin for close to 2, 3, 4 years, and these areas have been complaining and experiencing. Yeah, I just came into town. So do you think these people will ever enjoy what the governor is doing? Or is it that we have special persons who are meant to get things from the government?
I think the government of Edo State, as much as I'm aware, is an all-inclusive government that is meant to take care of the whole of the states.
We have areas that are receiving, that are not receiving from this government.
Now, when you say
we must be frank,
we have areas that are not receiving from this government, I think I will have to charge the newly inaugurated 8th Assembly, because that's part of their role to play, to oversight the functions of the government, and also to interface regularly with their people, because they are outside the local government, they are the one bringing the needs of the people to the state government, to the knowledge of the state government. If they visit home or their constituent regularly, interface with them and bring up the needs of their constituents through the knowledge of the government, I think they will be able to bring in most of those areas into the budget plans of the government. And when it comes to oversight functions, I don't think any government will just on its own want to cut out some areas. Just like you said, that there are some places that have never experienced government.
There have been outcries from those places,
so
and
that's part of why I acknowledge what our brother have said, Reverend Martins have said, that media have a role to play, because government is not a spirit.
okay.
So if we don't bring those things to the knowledge of the government, I don't think anybody will. Those things will be done. So if we bring up those areas, the outcries and all, to the knowledge of the government, and by the function and the help of the legislators, those things should be able to get into the state budget.
So they might just wake up one day and see what the government has done for them, since it's a wait-and-see government.
The government we have is a wait-and-see government.
Yes.
And if
miracles do happen, you know.
Miracles happens. If those needs are brought before the knowledge of the government, I think the governor can do something.
Okay, Reverend, quickly, I want you to react to the question I asked earlier. Succession is a serious problem, a major problem. Do you think we currently have persons that can fit into the current shoes or the gap or the pace the governor is setting currently?
You know, when you had that question, a song comes into my mind. Here I am. Send me. I mean, what does it take? I mean, you know, the governor looking for somebody. You said he should have Reverend Martins succeed him.
Okay.
However,
but it's not campaigning for
no, I'm not even.
Martins.
No, I'm just. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that
we have people.
You're here. They're people. All right. You know, a leader is not the most intelligent person.
Okay.
A leader is just a person who is able to bring all of the ideas together, coalesce them into a vision, and drive, you know, the vision. So you don't need. It's not rocket science. Some people say leadership to govern Nigerians is not easy. Once you think that something that you're doing is not easy, then you shouldn't be doing nothing ab initio, because you should enjoy really what you're doing. You should enjoy it so much so that the difficult part of it doesn't register. I'm sure you enjoy your job. When people think that it's not easy to talk, or you are wondering, to say, okay, because of the quote unquote the fun you have on the job, the difficult part doesn't come to you. So if the governor looks around, he will find a whole lot of people. But I think that the governor needs to, in succeeding himself, maintain what he's doing. Maybe not too many innovations like that, because there's a lot of areas that he has covered. That's why Zig Ziglar says it is more important to maintain than to regain. That's why, you see, the small maintenances in your car are better than when you drop the car for 1 year, 6 months. If you try to pick it up again, a whole lot of things. Rat will even help you eating, you know, some wires.
Absolutely.
So I think that the governor should also staff his weakness. You know, this governor is not, quote unquote, the stomach infrastructure person. He is not the typical politician. So I probably would say, look, in going forward, we need to have a blend of, quote unquote, a technocrat in a manner of speaking, but also a politician. Because people have accused this governor of not being a politician in terms of him not being a socialite. So going forward, we need somebody that can maintain the things that he's doing, but we need somebody that create that delicate balance in between knowing how to socialize with the people, interface with the people, and then with being political, and then, you know, being an expert in the things that he's doing. So, I mean, Edo State is full of, you know, people who are competent. You can't look for individuals in Edo State. We have won several awards, not too recently. A girl came out as the best in Unilag, had a perfect CGPA. And she's not the first, she's not the second. Before now, Edo State Civil Service had only 2 first-class graduates. As we speak now, they have over 50 first-class graduates who are working in the Edo State
service.
Yeah, in the Edo State service. And there are several people who are first class, who decided to go outside the shores of this country. Bottom line, we're not just the heartbeat of the nation. We're also the brain beat of the nation, because some of the best people in this country have come from Edo. There's a professor, Dennis Agbola, who discovered Lassa fever, and there are a couple of people like that. So whether in football, there's Osimhen. Whether in sport, whether in media, there is a Sonny Duke Okosun. All right, and there are several guys like that. So if we look properly, and there are several guys who have thrown their heart into the ring, both within the party of the governor and other political parties. Okay, it's not going to be the governor's sole responsibility. Because it's not a one-party state. Collective. But they must look for an individual that can articulate, represent containing what he represents, can articulate his views and mobilize the
irrespective of party line.
He mobilize. Of course, he's a party man, so he probably look, but he can recruit from outside his party. He, quote and unquote, was recruited from outside the party. He wasn't in the mainstream of the party. He can recruit from outside of the party as long as that individual represents what he represents, has a clear head, and then is empathic, feels the feelings of the Edo people, and can take Edo to greater heights than he has taken.
Okay, Comrade Freeborn, with the appointment of Justice Joe Archer as the Chief Justice of the state, we are in a time where expectations are high in the judiciary system. Looking at the backlash of the recently concluded presidential, state assembly, and of course governorship election in the state, what should we expect from the Edo judiciary as we are approaching the polls? September is just around the corner. What are your expectations from the judiciary system of the state?
The judiciary actually is, to me, the major problem we have in Nigeria. Because sometimes you see there are different rulings contradicting each other. So sometimes you see a ruling of the tribunal from the same judiciary sector. Then when you get to an appeal, another judge will rule against the ruling of the tribunal. So it's actually contradicting when you have the same judiciary sector contradicting themselves. So my expectation and what I expect from the judiciary is to have a uniform model of dealing with cases of electionary matters. Okay. There should be laid down criteria that they can also follow. Because if I have a case at the tribunal and the tribunal rule in my favor and my opponent go to appeal and appeal rule against the judgment I got from the tribunal, you now wonder what is actually going on at the judiciary sector. Okay. So it's a big problem we have in Nigeria at the moment. Okay,
Reverend, let's quickly take your thought as we begin to wrap up now. The judiciary system. There have been a lot of back and forth since we wrapped up the election. And of course, Edo State in focus. We're approaching the poll in September. What are take us through your thought and let's
thank you very much. I think that Nigeria has a problem, and I don't think that, contrary, I don't think that judiciary is the problem. Okay. The reason because judiciary is small, all right, and then because we're political animals, we focus more on political judgments. We don't focus on financial corruption. We don't focus on how many judges, how many people the judges have sent to jail for rape, for assault, for arson, all of those things. But because the major part of our lives, especially for those of us who are on this platform, is politics. He's PA to a politician. to a federal lawmaker. Yes, and then my organization is canvassers for democracy and rule of law. So we don't look at abuses on the girl child. So I don't think that judiciary, I think that the executive is even the major problem that we have, because the police is part of the executive. The immigrations that do passports is part of the executive arm of government. Customs, all right, that we leave the borders and come to my house to ask me for documents, import documents of a car. You left the borders, you left the port, you didn't ask me there. You didn't ensure that people got documents there. Then you come and put up a post in a roadblock to say, where are the documents that you used to, the car didn't drop from the heavens, even when Bible says that I will open the windows of heaven. It didn't literally mean that we're going to drop blessings. So I'm careful about our institutions. Okay. Right? I don't like to. Nigeria has a challenge, whether it is the judiciary, whether it is legislature. We can focus on legislature and say, oh, how much are they earning, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's a challenge, and I think that what we need essentially is judicial reforms. Okay. Do you know that till tomorrow, if you attend any court sitting, whether it's tribunal or whatever, you find out that our judges still write in longhand. All right? There isn't a stenographer. There isn't, a computerized hearing. So the man now has to go home and look at the merit of every case, one after the other, in longhand. Some have been able to adopt, shorthand. So there's a need for judicial, reforms, because judiciary, the members of the judiciary are Nigerians. They shop in Nigeria, and if you allow me to use a colloquial English, they chop in Nigeria too. Okay. So this is where they live. Well, so once we're able to guarantee judicial reforms, and then at the state level, there's financial autonomy. Okay. The governor doesn't have to buy cars or furnish the house of judges. The judges have a commission, like you have the Civil Service Commission, like you have the
independent of the executive.
Financially, because the man who pays the tune, they say,
the piper determines the tune.
The man who pays the piper determines the tune. Once we have those kind of reforms, I'm sure that the judiciary will sit up, and then we would have, and the contradictory judgments are usually induced anyway by the politicians, Nigeria has a problem. And I think that if we allow the judges to do their things the way they know how to do it, we have a better judicial system, which is the last hope of the common man. When they say common man, it's not just you and I. Anybody who is grieved, even if he's a multi-millionaire, as soon as he goes to the court, he's a common man.
Thank you so much, Reverend Olu Martins, for taking time to join us on the show. And of course, our comrade Freeborn Ahoma, for your patience and of course joining us on the program. I would like to have you guys again and extend the front line of this discussion.
If you serve tea, I will come again.
We'll certainly do that. Okay.